Hello, this is Delphina to let you know that Rennie's comic Kate Blast has just launched into its newest chapter. The Space Catboy Empire has arrived, and we'll be diving into Pixis's elusive backstory and some newfound tension between the Guardians. I'm a little scared, not gonna lie. You can catch up on the archive at kateblast.com or follow along on Twitter at RenniePlayer1 for updates. Check it out and enjoy the episode.
Hustling,
Making a living,
getting some bread,
earning some scratch,
raking in the dough,
hawking those wares,
bringing in the pizza money,
getting due recompense,
chasing the coin,
pursuing the wealth,
selling out.
selling books.
selling bread,
Buy my book.
Country toss wares if you have coin.
dollar bills.
Get in the cheddar.
Just do it! Don't let your dreams be dreams. Yesterday said tomorrow. So just do it! Make your dreams untrue!
Hello, and welcome to Screen Tones, where we talk anything and everything webcomics. Today, we're going to be talking about the infamous hustle, the process by which webcomic creators try to earn some income off their craft. I'm Verathane, my pronouns are she, they, and I make the webcomics Chiralt and Witchwood.
I am Crispy, my pronouns are she, they, and I make the comic Ghost Junk Sickness.
And I'm Delphina. I make the comic Somnolus, and my pronouns are she, her. So, it's time to talk about the dreaded subject of the hustle. These days, it seems like the subject of monetization is on a lot of creators' minds, if it's not on yours. We actually envy your calm and your liberation from the oppressive weight that is modern Western capitalism, and you should listen to another episode. Please, you can escape the contagion. It's not too late.
Anyway, a lot of people have questions about monetizing their comic, how to do it, and how to know when to do it, and whether monetizing at all is right for you. Let's discuss.
Before we start, I want to lay down some terms that we'll be using throughout the episode. So, generally speaking, passive revenue means a monetization option which, after it has been set up, it'll just kind of keep running on its own without requiring a ton of extra work from the creator or like constant monitoring. Active revenue means money that requires you to be present, either physically or digitally, and working the whole time it's being earned. Of course, most methods fall somewhere in a spectrum between those two categories, but I find the terms passive and active will just be kind of handy to keep in mind as we go through this episode.
Yeah, absolutely. With that in mind, let's get into the questions. All of us here today have monetized our comics in some way. Let's just do a little quick overview of what strategies we've tried. Let's start with you, Crispy.
So I was originally publishing my comic on the site Ink Blazers. It was founded in 2011, and it was a webcomic platform that hosted comics for free and gave creators like the opportunity to earn through like paid subscriptions, merchandise sales, and ad sales. It had a program for authors who would reach like a certain number of subs to be enrolled in their revenue program, like much similar to Tapas or Webtoons. The rights to the comics posted to Ink Blazers of the creators didn't like own them at all. It was all us only, and it was relatively like a wonderful place to grow, interact, and it was an awesome comic hub for those in the webcomic community. Unfortunately, though, it didn't last actually long at all. It closed in 2015, and then we pitched our comic, and we have been taken under Hiveworks B-Wing. Other methods that I have tried are doing the con hustle, going to TCAF, Ko-fi donations on the site. We have a little button that people can click, and we've recently launched Patreon. It's a bit of a wild guess to see what works and what doesn't so far. I'm very new to it, so it's been interesting doing that. We have like some tiers for it that have like a tip jar like our Ko-fi. There's exclusive illustrations tier where we also show like whips and stuff like that. And then we have a higher tier that shows like behind the scenes and projects that we are not releasing to the public. And then, of course, like I said before, being with Hiveworks. I've been with them for 7 years. And because of their nature as a publisher, I've earned income creating our comic. Their models depend on ad revenue and contracts, so a lot of the money that you make with them varies author to author, though.
That's a lot of stuff. I mean, and it's so interesting to to see because my comic Zombulus has also been going on for a good decade plus now. So things evolve so much over time. I know for me, the the first I've always had my own site, zombulus.com, and then I put ads on it through Project Wonderful. That was one of my first um, ad kind of adventure and made a little bit of money, but Project Wonderful also kind of went under a couple years ago, and so yeah, haven't really experimented a lot with the replacement, but comicad.net is another advertising kind of banner system that you can put on your site. So, similar vein. Once I had enough pages, I went to Kickstarter to make books because I really wanted physical books. And so at that point, I was selling both like the digital and physical copies of Somnolus, books 1, 2, and 3 at this point. And then also other little merch that I just wanted to play with and experiment. I do little buttons. I have I made some little bags last time I did a Kickstarter. That one of them I'm using as a purse right now. I did coffee cups and stuff, just little things that tie into the lore and stuff to sell to the super fans almost. Having that book run also meant that I could go to conventions, which was another thing I really wanted to do. So I was starting in 2014 through 2019. I did quite a few conventions, 3 different countries and stuff, and I would just go there, sell my books, and also just other random little D&D adjacent sorts of humor things that were the intent was, hey, you're looking at my book and it's kind of humorous and it's kind of fantasy. Another thing that's kind of humorous and kind of fantasy is D&D, and maybe you're more familiar than that with my comic. So if you like that, then you'll like my comic. That was kind of the idea there. And then also Patreon. I started up a Patreon, and so it's mostly for existing readers to see my early pages. They get a little special preview at the beginning of the month to show like some sneak peeks of pages. And I've started doing time lapse videos there of illustrations that I do. I've also done little giveaways, stickers or something like they could pick from my stock of convention stickers or whatever, just little treats for people who are there to support me. And then the one-time Ko-fi donations, I just have there just in case anybody wants to do that.
I feel like a lot of these monetization strategies, I mean, many of them, like a lot of us have tried, or almost all of us have tried, because I feel like as soon as one thing is kind of revealed to be working for other creators, a lot of other folks will start jumping on it. And that's kind of been, I feel like I've tried a little bit of everything kind of as it came up over the years. Because I started Churalt in 2007. I'm going to kind of go over the various things I've done in chronological order. So I started doing conventions initially with just prints. That was my only merch because I was drawing a lot of things. And actually, before I even had a comic, I was going to conventions kind of with these illustrations that I'd done because I could just get this printed on a piece of paper and somebody can give me money for that. Whoa. So I initially was doing a lot of like anime cons and things like that. Animaritime was the first show I ever went to, which was a very small, like kind of local con in New Brunswick, and I had a lot of fun. So I kind of kept at it and slowly started adding more things to my roster, mostly also paper goods because those tend to be the easiest to produce. So like bookmarks, eventually stickers. um, Once my comic was kind of underway, obviously I was going to start incorporating that into my con setup, which was a little bit like slow because printing a whole book with multiple pages is a bit more work than just making a single sheet of paper with a cool picture on it. So I started with mini comics, which I had a couple that I made for like a school project. And then the first one that I made that was really kind of relevant to my webcomic, I created a 48-page mini comic called Shenanigans that I printed copies of. And I started taking those to conventions because even though I didn't have the whole webcomic available, I could kind of have something that was self contained that I could give people and be like, here's kind of the idea of it. You can buy this from me right now, and then you can go read my webcomic at this website that I've printed on the back. The first kind of online monetization strategy that I tried was also putting ads on my site back in the Project Wonderful days. I'm quite a fan of Comic Ad now that it's out. It's sort of a spiritual successor. I started my Patreon in 2014, which was like a year after Patreon itself launched. I actually went and looked it up before we started the episode. I was like, when did they launch? It was 2013. I started that thing really quick, I guess. Uh, it's funny because there was a lot of dubiousness about like microtransactions at that point in time. A lot of webcomic artists were like, people won't go for that. Who will actually do it? But then there was also this sentiment of like, but like if anybody wants to, like surely I should enable this for them because even if it's only a couple people, it's still worth it to me, right? I would love to get that little bit of extra change. So I like Patreon because it kind of splits the difference between like passive and active income. Like obviously I have to promote it. I have to think of things to put on it. But because most of what I offer is related to stuff that I'm already going to make anyway, it's a lot of early access. Like I have a buffer of pages, and my patrons can see the pages in my buffer well in advance of when they show up on the website. So that's kind of the main draw is like, do you want to read 1 to 2 months to a year ahead of what people on the site are seeing? Like, you can go here. Um, I I started turning to Kickstarter a little after that, around 2015, because I really wanted a physical book of my comic, and I was running. I think I didn't know when I started doing the Kickstarters how many books I was going to print. It ended up being 5, but I ran 4 campaigns for 5 books. I was spacing them kind of a year apart because I did book 1 in 2015, book 2 in 2016, and so on. And then as I was doing book 3, I realized that I was so close to the end of the story that I was going to finish it within another year. And I didn't want to be running a Kickstarter after the comic was ended, like a year later. Like I'd wrap it up and then I'd be like, hey, everybody, come back. I'm doing a thing. Come look at it and give me money. So I did a combined Kickstarter for volumes 4 and 5 in 2018. And those were really successful. I think it was probably the single most kind of impactful monetization strategy I did, which I'll go more into later. But to continue the rundown, I made an online store in like shortly after the first Kickstarter, mostly to have a way to continue selling books online even after the campaign was over. Because I printed more books than I strictly needed. I was like, I want to keep selling these. I want to take these to conventions and incorporate them into my general offering of things. But it would be nice if people could just kind of buy them anytime too. So I made a Gumroad account and I listed my books there and slowly started adding other things to it, like other stickers and stuff like that. Another thing that I tried more recently is I made a mirror on Webtoon, which has an ad revenue program that creators can access once they reach a certain threshold of views and subscribers. So Webtoon's threshold is 1,000 subscribers and 40,000 views in a month. For a while, it was US only views, and now it's global views altogether, which makes it a little easier to get onto that program. Tapas also has an ad revenue based monetization option. So for people who make a mirror on there, you can actually start accessing their ad revenue at just 100 subscribers. And I'm not actually sure whether there is a page view threshold. I have to look into that again. Because that ballpark is low, obviously you're going to make more ad revenue off 40,000 page views than off of 1,000 page views. So the numbers from Webtoons tend to be bigger if you get into it, but the Tapas one, a lot of people can kind of access right away after making their mirror. So there's kind of benefits and drawbacks to both strategies. I've also made accounts on Ko-fi, which I think some others have kind of gone into. And there's another website called Dilly Hub, which is trying to be kind of both a comic host, like a mirror, like Webtoon or Tapas or like a Smack Jeeves or something like that, where people can read your comic there, but also pay for it if they want, depending on what kind of settings the creator has enabled. I made the Dilly Hub, but I haven't really been promoting it or pushing it. So it kind of remains to be seen how it's doing for me. And very, very, very recently, the newest thing is that now Witchwood is on Hiveworks. And because at the time of recording, this is like a 2-week old thing, I can't go into too much detail about how it's working out, but I'm optimistic. It seems pretty cool so far. So with kind of my roundup out of the way, it's time to get into some more detail about all these things. So I'm going to ask our speakers, what methods have you found the most success with, or which ones do you like the most? Talk to us, Crispy.
Probably like something I had the most fun with, and it was the most successful for us, is conventions. It's had a really good and positive impact on a lot of the things that we do, because it actually was the catalyst to push us to print books for Ghost Junk. Unfortunately, because of the times, that has really stopped. We're I think we're 3 books behind printing schedule now. We used to do a book a year, which is crazy, but anyway. Um, but that was really awesome. Like, our books sold really well. It was good to make contacts. It was good to make new readers and stuff like that. And it was definitely a driving point for sales, and all that stuff, as well as that pushed us to do fun merch and kind of explore that. Um, Again, because the times have changed. I haven't been exploring merchandise as much as I'd like to, but the one thing that's really cool, or one, I guess, the many things that are really cool, is that with my experience being in Hiveworks, is that I have a nice little merchandise contract with them. So I do actually have a store for our comic, that we can at least sell that stuff online, so that we don't have to be there in physical. But of course, always missing those connections and whatnot is the biggest thing. The other thing that I really actually enjoy is Ko-fi, like I was talking about. It's been one of my faves. We have it on our website. It's just a little tip cup, a little button that they get to click, throw us some change. It's nice passive income. I don't really have to think about it. Um, and if you're kind of into that, they actually have like a little bit of a Patreon version, if you pay for their gold subscription, and then you can offer like paywalled content and stuff like that. I've been really enjoying Ko-fi, and it's been working out for me.
I mostly see it come up as like an alternative to Patreon sort of thing whenever that subject of conversation comes up. Everyone's like, Ko-fi also has monthly subs, but I'm not sure how many folks are making use of it.
Yeah, that's always the hard thing when you have like kind of people in one spot to get people to go to another, especially when it has something to do with money, and kind of being like, hey, like, I don't want to use this platform anymore. Let's kind of jump to this one. And I mean, I know the struggle. I don't want to sign up for another thing and have my email account on something else and have to remember another password. I totally get it. The hustle is real.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, from my experience, I would definitely agree that conventions are my absolute favorite. Just like they are so much fun. There's so much great energy, and it gets you out from behind your little computer screen
Hmm.
because I feel like there's so much that people stress over and people make assumptions about this is how people perceive my work and this is how blah 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 blah. And when you get to a convention, you actually get to see it on people's faces.
Yeah.
It's a very fun testing ground where you can hand somebody your book and very directly see what emotions are going across their face, what they say to you, what kinds of things they notice, and it's just like you get so much data that way. And so now I know like, oh, okay, people are kind of like looking at this and they're seeing some like elements of D&D. They're saying, "Oh, is this a D&D comic?" And you can take that with like kind of the bitter, "Oh, no, they think it's a D&D comic," but you can also say, "Hey, these people are attracted to D&D stuff and I could make D&D merch and sell that too." And that's exactly what I did. So conventions worked very well for me. I am in a similar boat. The times are making conventions a little less practical. Um, I also loved Kickstarter. I think I kickstarted my first 3 books, and just coming up with little packages and thinking, my little pie in the sky dreams of like, okay, what do I want to give the super fans? What do I want to like? What do I want them to have that's really special and specific to my comic that I might not make and put in a store ever? Um, because like I had like coffee mugs, I had like aprons from the coffee shop in Somnolus, like just all kinds of like little goofy things. I'm like, I would never put aprons in my online store. I have a little online store, but like I don't want to stock that, but I can make a couple for the people who want it. And so yeah, that's been fun. It did get a little sticky last time because shipping rates went up from the between my campaigns, so that was a less fun aspect of that. And I also like Patreon a lot. I think it's also a good little online testing ground where I can put that up. It is somewhat passive, but I do push it. I do try to let people know it's there, and I try to let people know that I've posted on there so that they know it exists. Um, and it's sort of there's kind of acquisition and retention. Acquisition is getting new people to buy your things who have never heard of your thing before. And retention is the people who like your thing and know your thing and know who you are, getting them to continue to give you money. And so Patreon is an exercise in retention, um, much more so than acquisition for me. I think a lot of people get confused or really think like, oh, I'm going to get such and such new patrons a month, and it's really more for rewarding your current readers in my experience. And it's also just a nice little place to experiment with things. I've done like little time lapse videos. I did awkward voicemails from my characters. I did like, just thinking of different things to see how I like it, see how the audience likes it, and see if it's sustainable. And if we're all thumbs up on all those things, build on that. And if it's not, then that's data. And it's kind of been attractive for my big fans to read ahead. I think I should do more pages ahead. I just need a bigger buffer. Um, but yeah, those it's really fun. I really enjoy Patreon.
I think it's nice on Patreon, especially because you really are kind of interacting directly with your super fans. Like they're probably going to be present if you do a Kickstarter as well, but with Patreon, you kind of get to spend more time like seeing the things that they're responding to over a longer period of time. Because a Patreon can last for many, many years, whereas a Kickstarter is just kind of a big 1 month burst. I really like both for kind of similar but different reasons. I feel like Kickstarter for me, it's like a whole convention just for me, like, except
Mm.
it's over a period of about a month instead of like 2 or 3 days. And it's very energizing, I guess. Like, I always feel super keyed up while one is running. I There have been some recent news about Kickstarter, which is kind of making it a little bit of a question about like its future in the comics scene. There are other platforms that have been appearing kind of to take its place as a large project based crowdfunding strategy. I've been hearing about a platform called Zoop that is kind of geared towards comics specifically. There's also Topatico is kind of entering the crowdfunding market, and I'm interested to see where that goes. I don't have any experience with either of these yet. At the moment, kind of a lot of these big project based and especially merch based things are kind of being put on hold because of supply chain problems and various other issues. Because anything involving physical stuff that you have to ship out, it's going to be a little extra complicated in our year 2022. So I'm looking forward to kind of getting back into that and getting back into conventions, especially. Um, I also feel like I haven't like this is probably the least kind of lucrative of the monetization options that I've gone over so far, but I feel like I do want to give a shout out to Comic Ad just for being so like simple to get set up and like get running with. I feel like one of the questions when it comes to monetizing is kind of when do you know if it's like if you're ready to do it. And a lot of people might be like, "Oh, I'm not ready yet. My comic's too new." But with something like Comic Ad, you can really get started on it immediately, and all you do is kind of make the account and put a little bit of code on your website, and then people can immediately start bidding. And it might just be like a couple cents a month or something like that. But it's kind of, I don't know, it's just also nice community wise because you'll have different comics kind of appearing in that spot. Makes me feel good. I don't know. Um, but for some of the others, I do think it is often a good idea to wait a little bit before kind of jumping into some of these bigger ones, especially if they are like very labor intensive, like Kickstarter. One rule of thumb that I kind of stand by is like, has anybody mentioned wanting this thing to me yet? Then I'll start thinking about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's just a lot to be said, like what we were talking about, just active versus passive. Like, you don't, you're not going to have the energy to like do a Kickstarter every month. You're not going to have the energy to like do these big bursts. And you
I
really
wish
have
though.
to. I know, me too. I get in this mindset, like I come up with all these ideas and then I'm just like, when am I going to find the time to do that? So just balancing it out is super important.
Balancing it out and also trying things and not feeling defeated if they don't work out either. I think it's always good to kind of embrace things and being like, okay, I'll try it out. Um, like I was talking about, oh, both Delphi and I were talking about how much we enjoy conventions, but they're not for everybody. There's possibly, I think of conventions as most high energy as opposed to making the comic and stuff like that. There's a lot of energy involved in preparation months in advance to get into this, and it's pretty intense. I would say if you have the opportunity to try it, go for it. But if it doesn't work out as well as any other thing, don't force it either, because like we said in our hats episode with webcomics, um, there's a lot of different types of jobs and things that we have to do to kind of keep this rolling, and you don't want to burn yourself out on this.
Yeah, burnout is definitely a real worry. And on that subject, that leads to the third question, which is what are some pitfalls that you've run into or that you've seen other people run into that you'd like to warn creators about?
Ooh. Well, my number one thing is never put all of your eggs in one basket. I was talking previously about being on Ink Blazers. I literally thought the day that I hit being eligible for their revenue program, like that was it. I was like, this is it. Like Ghost Junk's got it. We're gonna make some. God, I'm embarrassed. We're gonna make some cheddar. Like this is it, y'all. And then it literally, I think it kicked the bucket 2 weeks after we got
Oh
it.
no.
Oh gosh,
Oh my
that's
God,
terrible.
it's absolute clown move. Like,
All that bread vanishing into the
oh, it was
distance.
so great. We got that email and it was like, actually, and then it died. And I was like, oh. And there was no warning. And that's the thing, is that, like, kind of relying on one thing could kind of, disappear. Even especially in this year of 2022, conventions, or in the last 3 years, I will say, have been hard to kind of go for it. And it's not easy switching. It's not easy to be like, oh, try another thing. But also, I encourage you to try a bunch of things so it's not as hard of a fall when things happen like that.
Yeah, it's just so important to try new things. I think that's really the way you get to know your audience, and know your product, because I feel like a lot of us, this is a pitfall that I've fallen into so many times. Like, some people have a very illustrative style, very detailed illustrations, and they sell prints, and people look at them and say, "That's oh my gosh, that's so beautiful." And a lot of comic artists aspire to be that, and whether it's lack of skill or lack of opportunity, or maybe subject matters that people don't really resonate with or understand, there could be a million reasons, but you could also make prints and they would not sell as well, because whatever. So, but that's the thing though, is there's so many different ways that you can appeal to people. You can use comedy, share your expertise with like writing or art or something like that. There's so many other approaches that people have come up with. So even if you don't have like gorgeous art, if you're drawing like Garfield style, very cartoony and stuff, nobody's going to open the newspaper to Garfield and say, "Oh my gosh, that's a gorgeous illustration I want on my wall and I'm going to buy it." But it does have an appeal, and it's made several dollars of things. So like, that's the thing. You got to try some different things, and you've got to um experiments, especially for Patreon. I think people think of it like, oh, it's this marathon thing, and I have to do the same thing month after month after month after month, and for the rest of time, and that burns the heck out of people, because they don't take breaks, and they're trying to do, well, I'm going to do a print club, I'm going to do a sticker club, and I'm going to send things out every month. And you might not be ready for that. Maybe your audience really isn't there, so you're sending out a sticker a month to one person, and that's not even worth the cost of the sticker. Um, and b, you're going to burn out. So the thing that you really want to do is build into your process, whether that's maintaining a store or maintaining a Patreon or going to a convention, to say, I'm going to try a thing and I'm going to change it in a couple months. I am not going to continue this forever. I'm just going to see how it works. I'm going to give it my best shot for a couple months. And I want to try it, see how I like it, and see if it's sustainable. And you can build on it if you find at the end of that month or the end of that 3 months or whatever period you want to do it, that yeah, it was fun. I didn't really get a lot of people like interested in it, but I think if I could keep it up a little more, it seemed pretty sustainable, so maybe I'll do that. Or maybe it's just, oh, yeah, a lot of people wanted that. A lot of people were really responsive to, maybe your commissions or whatever. So, and I had fun doing it, so I'm going to keep doing that. And it's all data. I think that's the important thing. Just treat this like you're a scientist and you're collecting data about how your stuff works. And there's so many control variables that you can play with, so many like little hypotheses you could come up with to say, I think people will buy this if I make the price point, if I do a little sale, if I do a little 2-for-1 sale or something like that, I'm going to push it on Patreon or I'm going to push it on Twitter or something, and I'm going to see what happens. I'm going to make little banners and stuff. I'm going to see if anybody bites. This is the hypothesis that I'm testing. And the nice thing about a hypothesis is that it always succeeds because you're either proving or disproving it, and you're not like, it's not a fail or pass. It's just like, this is the data that I've gathered. I have successfully gathered data no matter what I do. So I just encourage people to think that way. I think there's a lot of people who try a thing. They said, well, nobody wants this, so I guess I'm going to give up. And you can't fall into that mindset. You really have to look around and see what ideas you can come up with and what is fun and sustainable and attractive to people.
Yeah, definitely. I think what you were saying earlier about the discount codes and sales and stuff like that, it's funny because a lot of the times that I have had the most success with online sales, or really in person too, because conventions are kind of the encapsulation of this, but having something be like time sensitive and kind of urgent tends to be the best way to kind of get a brief spike in sales.
Yeah.
Because I like marketing is very important for all this. Like you have to tell people that you have something out there if they're gonna go for it. But like the other thing is that if you can tell them, oh, this discount code is only available this week, so if you want it, you should jump on it right away, or like doing a giveaway that like has a clear end date, it all definitely tends to help kind of drive sales to a thing.
And being a little sparing with it, kind of make it special little event when it happens so that people are kind of like, oh, okay. I've seen some people be like, give away too much, or the sale looks like it's just a normal thing now, and the traction definitely starts to go down further.
Oh, absolutely. I feel like that's honestly my biggest problem with kind of having an online store is that I very rarely do anything like that. So occasionally I'll have this thought like, boy, my online store just isn't really selling anything. And then I just kind of got to smack myself in the forehead and be like, okay, I haven't been like doing much to kind of push it. So I shouldn't take this too much to heart. But to actually expand on that point just a little more, kind of the biggest pitfall that I sort of want to talk about is something a little more psychological, I guess. Which is that with a lot of these things, especially the ones like Patreon that are attached to like a number that other people can look at on your site, or that you can go to somebody else's and look at their number, it's really, really easy to start thinking that your comics financial performance in general, or like specific performance in these places like Patreon or Webtoon or whatever, is like directly representative of its quality or of your skill as a creator. And like kind of getting to compare yourself to your peers and using that to make yourself feel bad. Uh, it's not true. None of these things are actually true. You can have like the best comic in the world and like no patrons, or vice versa, or not have a Patreon at all. Like it doesn't correlate. So something to watch out for with any of these like monetization options is like if you're thinking about joining a platform and you feel like it might exacerbate these kind of thought processes, or if you just find you've been prone to having these patterns in the past, it's worth kind of thinking about whether you want to step into this kind of ring, because you don't have to. Like, none of this is actually needed for like getting readers to your story or meeting other creators, or like I guess it depends on what you want out of the webcomic process in general. And adding monetization is something that you can do, which can be fun. It can get you some extra money, which is also super cool. But all of these things are extras to some extent. And don't start thinking that they like define you or your worth as a creator or your comic's worth.
And just real talk, don't also expect that you're gonna pay a lot of bills with them. Just like all of these things, like you can experiment, and some will be more successful than others, but the chances are very, very small for like actually really. Oh, I'm gonna leave my job now because I'm gonna make all the money on this. Like, if the data supports that, yeah, but if it doesn't, it might not. You need data before you can make that call.
Yeah, definitely. That whole don't quit your day job thing is real. I have a job. I'm gonna say this right up front. I have a different job that's not webcomics. So it gives me freedom to play around with these things without thinking that I need to depend on them.
I think it's definitely like when you hit that realization that it is not a lot of people who have a quote unquote full-time webcomic job. It kind of does help to ground you and to kind of get that little bit of a reality punch to the face to be like, okay, like obviously it's a lot of people's dreams and stuff like that, but it's hard. The hustle is hard to make it stable enough to really do that. But it's not any place to compare your quote unquote financial performance with somebody else. It's just it's so subjective. It's hard to track.
Yeah, and you really never know what kind of factors go into, like, if you see like a Patreon that's going like crazy gangbusters, like there could be all kinds of different marketing sources that like other folks have that you're just not even aware of. So who knows? It's all made up numbers anyway.
Yeah. People bring like audiences from different places. They're doing fan art or something on the side, or conventions or stuff. You don't know. I think that's the really key thing is there can be all kinds of places your audiences come from, and you know, based on where they're coming from, how much they're going to be spendy. I think a lot of places or approaches, like maybe they're kids or something like that, and they don't have a lot of pocket change. So it's not that your comic is bad or anything, it's just that your audience doesn't have that kind of money. I do think being kind of transparent about, hey, I'm a person behind my art,
Mhm.
and I'm working on this. We really do depend and appreciate on reader support, and here are my preferred ways of receiving that. Just state that outright. I don't think there's any shame in that.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a lot of kind of emotions that people have wrapped up in this subject. So I wanted to kind of talk about that a little bit as we go through this on the episode. In particular, much as I love Kickstarter, I know it can be one of kind of the most fraught experiences emotionally, like as you're going through it. And one There was a creator who ran a campaign like just a 2 months or so before I ran mine, and one of the things that they posted about it kind of in the aftermath was like, boy, I wish I'd known what a number this was going to do on my mental health, like going through
Oh
it, because
gosh.
it could be very stressful, like watching those numbers for a month. And each of these platforms tends to have kind of a pattern that it'll go through. And with a like month long, very time sensitive initiative like Kickstarter, uh, almost all Kickstarters will have kind of the same pattern of a huge spike of pledges at the very beginning and at the very end, and then like a flat period in the middle of it. And
Mhm.
during that flat period is like the most like nail biting point in time like ever. Like
It's the
you
worst.
it's so awful. Like you get used to it. You see the big spike on like, week 1 or whatever, and then suddenly it's like nobody pledged today. What am I doing wrong? What am I
Oh
going to do?
no. Oh
So
my god.
you sort of have to brace for that and be like, am I ready for this? Like, I mean, not just do I have, enough comic pages to fill a book, and like, do I have the like marketing wherewithal to put together the graphics, but like, am I ready?
Mhm. Mhm. I think that's a question you should be asking yourself at the beginning of any of this is am I ready? Like, a lot of these do take a lot of time, effort, and mental energy, like you said. So it's just, you have to be in the mindset to either go in the long run or get through that really long Kickstarter month that feels like a year.
Yeah. And they do kind of build off of each other. Like I did the Kickstarters after I had already been like doing conventions for a little while and doing kind of a bunch of other stuff. I think I started the Patreon first, technically. It's been a while. What is time? But it definitely, like, each thing that I did kind of made the next thing a little bit easier. So I kind of worked my way into it. And now I'm kind of at a point where, like, if I think about, like, it'd be fun. I drew some little cats the other day. What if I made those into stickers and I listed them on my Gumroad? I'll just do it. I don't
Yeah.
think too hard about it anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so cool that like when you get into like conventions or Kickstarters or whatever, you start building this bank of merchandise, and exactly like you said, like it all builds on each other. So if you do a thing and you try it once and you're like, "Oh my gosh, this was miserable. This was hard. Is it always going to be this hard to prepare?" No, it's actually not. It's a little easier every time because you know what to do and you know what to expect, and you have those contacts with the printers or whatever you're going to be using. And yeah, I guess I'm just saying don't give up, because there's a lot that you can learn and grow from a small seed.
And don't we all deserve that comic pizza?
Yes.
I
I would
want a
like a
slice.
slice. Oh my goodness. I want
We
to
all want a slice of that.
dip my crust in the comic money dip.
So
Oh, yeah.
garlicky, tastes like
Mm.
dollars.
Well, it sounds like this has been a roasted red pepper and goat cheese wrap. So thank you so much for listening. I've been your host, Verathane, and you can find my work at chiralt.sevensmith.net or at witchwoodcomic.com.
And I am Crispy. You can find my work at ghostjunksickness.com.
And I'm Delphina, and you can find my comic Somnambulus at somnambulus.com, and I'm gonna go get pizza.
We should get pizza together one day.
Okay, how do we
comic
monetize the
pizza.
pizza?
Oh my god,
Make some
no.
stickers.
Oh, pizza stickers.
Thanks for listening to Screen Tones. Subscribe to us on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts to be notified of new episodes. And be sure to follow us on Twitter at ScreenTonesCast.